Did you?
What's up, Skunk fam? I think most of you have been following along with our series with Joe Pietri. I'm sitting here with Blue Skies and Joe. He's got some stuff he wants to talk about today. So without any further ado, how you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good, doing good. I've done some paperwork just to make sure that I go over all my points before I do my 12-1 advanced growing technique class. That just is direct aid to all growers. I'm going to do that at the end of this bit, and then we're going to talk about cultivation. Okay, I'm going to go through a list of people and what they've done to cannabis. Carlton Turner, he was the head of the Mississippi medical program that sent canisters of legal weed, still does, but there's only about 4 people left or 5 people left alive that still have a license from those days. From I guess it was the Carter administration that made medical marijuana. So Carlton Turner was the head of that program. Every confiscation that happened, samples would go to the University of Mississippi. The University of Mississippi probably has the biggest catalog of seeds in the world that they've been collecting all through the prohibitionary times, from the Colombians, the Thais, the Jamaicans, all the weeds that they were seizing at the time, because there was no indigenous grow scene in America at the time, except the stuff that was coming from Mexico. Mexicans have always grown great weed. Well, anyway, Carlton Turner went on to become Robert Connolly Clark studied under Carlton Turner. So did the Skunk Man. In fact, Robert Connolly Clark thanked Carlton Turner for his help in his book writing, his book that he wrote, Hashish. And so they have that connection going back to like the Carter administration. Okay, that's when these guys were going to college and writing all their resumes. And so the making their resumes. Well, one of the resumes was being working at the University of Mississippi with Carlton Turner. And when Reagan became president, he made Carlton Turner the drug czar. And one of the first things that Carlton Turner did was paraquat the fields in Georgia and the fields in Mexico. The next thing that this idiot did is come out with a kit where you could test your pot to see if it had been sprayed with paraquat. By the way, nowadays, first of all, they sprayed people in Vietnam with paraquat because that was a defoliant for the jungle, right? Nowadays, and it took years, decades before the VA would make people that were sprayed with paraquat got cancer and Parkinson's and all that, made them eligible for them to get that money. A lot of them being already dead. Hopefully their family got the money. I don't know how that works, but that time the feds, they knew they gave you cancer. They know that, but they didn't tell you that because they were using it as Roundup and all that. You know what I mean? Roundup has paraquat in it. So he comes out with it and he advertised it in High Times. Okay? He advertised it in High Times. This guy is the professor who taught these guys at the University of Mississippi, and basically, laid out the groundwork for them taking over the cannabis genome and putting in a marker, a genetic marker inside weed, so that they could, and then go around the world and infiltrate and mix their genetically marked weed with the indigenous weed, so that one day they can come back and declare that the medical, that they control and they own the medical efficacy. That's why you see weed that's strictly all THC, all the cannabinoids and terpenes have been separated. Now you can get CBD, CBG, CBA, whatever. You used to get that in all the weed, dude. See that when the science caught up, it had to be made legal again for them to do what they're doing now. Who knows all these natural medicines, whether they're cannabis based, you know? But Carlton Turner is the granddaddy of them all. Okay, Mel Frank has been associated with Carlton Turner, the Skunk Man, Robert Connolly Clark. He wrote a book with Ed Rosenthal about growing indoors in a closet. So he thinks that he's the granddaddy of indoor. He's the granddaddy of the CIA. Well, I can't say that he's a cop because I don't know that he's a cop, but he sure does hang out with a lot of cops. You know, so his seed bank is off as well. And when they say old school stuff, this school stuff, you know, it's all made up. You can't believe half of what those people say at this point. And basically, all the stuff that they're producing now is shit because they've already already starting to reduce the quality of the weed to be able to control you. You know what I mean? They don't want you getting the good stuff. They want you getting the mediocre stuff. The other day, I went to Philo's Bioscience and I looked at the DNA sequencing of mimosa, which is sort of a popular strain. It was hemp. It was half hemp. So what they've done is they've mixed taught everybody how to mix the stuff in, and people who don't know what they're doing are mixing this stuff in. And so a lot of the weed that you have out there today is basically hemp.
Well, I know it's basically shit, so it's got to be some reason for it.
Well, when you mix a hemp plant with a drug plant, you lose 50% of the potential of the plant either way. Both way. The THC plants get CBD, and the CBD plants get THC. So you cut it down in half, basically. Yeah. So anyway, Mel Frank is a publisher, and he publishes a lot of books for a lot of people. He probably publishes Cervantes' books. He publishes a lot of people's books. He basically is one of the people that help control the cannabis media and cannabis information.
Well, I see he's teamed up with a guy called Mass Medical Strains. Are you aware of this character?
Yeah, that's all. You know, you're gonna make yourself crazy if you.
Mass Medical is one of the biggest frauds in the modern industry. He's like, oh man, he's unbelievable. He's
I don't pay attention to any of that because I do my own medical research.
Oh, this kid don't do no medical. He's a fraud from the start. He doesn't know anything. He's 27, Joe. He's 27.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't bother with them.
He uses a voice changer on podcasts to make him sound like he's in his 50s or something, and he's a fraud from start to finish.
Oh yeah, but that's 90% of the industry.
Yeah,
and it's all created by fraud, lies, and deceptions, and control of the cannabis media and cannabis information by the likes of Mel Frank.
Yeah.
And that's not his real name. That's his pen name. He has another name. I forget it is. I have it written down somewhere. He went to court to protect, in his real name, to protect Mel Frank and his publishing, something that he had written in a magazine to throw off the ice water method, right? And so he represented himself. But he represented himself, who was the publisher, in another name. So in the court, they never realized that that Mel Frank and the guy that was representing Mel Frank were the same person.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've seen him do some wild shit. But you know, he's a war criminal. Everybody I'm going to mention to you now is a drug war criminal who helped put a lot of people, good people, in jail. Okay. You know, the idea. You know, so everybody I mentioned to you now are extremely the worst characters that we have on the scene, and they're the ones. I go to look up an article that I wrote. Bubble bags, the biggest consumer ripoff in cannabis history, right? Man, I went through like 10, 15, 20 pages of bubble bag stuff before I even found it. Then I had to change the name. And my original article, the only way I could find it was in THC Farmer, and you know, they love me over there. They know I speak the truth. It's, you know, we'll get to the bubble bag, but the reason that Mel Frank is a drug war criminal is because he's sold out. He's the one that helps control the media. He's the one that helps control the information. He's a book publisher, one of the biggest cannabis book publishers in the game.
Yeah.
He's totally in bed with the Dutch. He fought as an article written in a German magazine about the ice water method, and he refuted it. And when he refuted it for Mel Frank, because he was the publisher, the real publisher in name. So he was refuting Mel Frank, and Mel Frank was like a ghost figure. No, you know, he's representing his client, Mel Frank. Oh, by the way, Mel Frank and the publisher are the same guy. But he got away with that in Germany. But he had to write back he had to refute the refute. But you know, he's the worst kind of criminal. Him and Rosenthal with their publishing, him and Cervantes, because they've been the front people for the information. You know, they're the ones writing the grow books. They're the ones who this year, 2 years ago, Rosenthal went to India and had his first bong lassi. You know, just so that he could say he'd been to India and had a bong lassi. Dude, I mean, it's just like ridiculous. It's like so ridiculous. You know, somebody wrote Ed Rosenthal a letter. It says, if you want to put iron in your cannabis, the easiest thing to do is just take a rusty nail and stick it through your stem. And he actually wrote that when somebody was goofing on him. You know what I mean? So these guys are the main criminals because they're the ones that are putting out the information and writing about how great they are. You know what I mean? So it's a bad situation when you have someone of Mel Frank's character as a major publisher of cannabis information. And he's in bed with Ben Dronkers and that whole scene, and they all write in support of each other.
Yeah, he tried to get me to send him some skunk seeds, and I was like, nah.
No, you can't. You know, if you're going to be afraid about sending that, you should stop selling seeds. So what I did, I stopped selling seeds. You really have to have a long background and someone I know real well before I give you anything or sell you anything ever fucking again. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. Right now, I'm into preservation. Anyway, we're gonna go to Bubble Man. I wrote an article, Bubble Man, the big bubble bags, the biggest consumer ripoff of all time. First of all, and High Times is in bed with it because nobody promoted the bubble bags more than fucking High Times, right? First of all, Mila came out. The first ripoff was Mila. Mila is one of the biggest pirates that there are in Europe. You know, she flies back first class. You get these when you fly back and forth from Europe and stuff. You get these magazines where you can buy all these little things for when you're traveling, you know. And they had a little washing machine, right? That washed panties. So she started selling that washing machine along with her kit, so you can just make cash on the road. I mean, crazy shit like that. I mean, she was the first ripoff. She came out with the isolator bags. She broke the contract with Reinhard Delp. Before that, she had been selling the machine that Reinhard invented to process it, to use his method. The machine that was basically designed for his method. And the machine had 150 micron screen, and then it had a bladder with a tube that came out, and the trichomes. One thing that about using bags is that when you use bags, you release. First of all, they tell you wait until the trichomes are half amber. Why would anybody who's growing medicine wait until the medicine is degraded 50%? If you're not, as soon as all your trichomes are cloudy, that's at that point that you need to cut it. The first time you see amber is when you cut your plant.
Joe, you know who also promoted that heavily?
They all do.
Soma. He was always saying, leave everything for, if you think it's finished, wait a week extra, get it all amber.
You know why? You know why? Because when you let it degrade like that, you catch it more. You get more of a product because it's harder. It's easier to catch, but it's been degraded. That's totally. It's been totally the wrong way. Do me a favor. Don't interrupt me, because if you do, I'm going to lose track of where I'm going.
Okay, buddy.
Thank you. Mila, she was the first ripoff. She was under contract to Reinhardt Delp, and she was selling the bags and the machines, right? But then she invented the bags. You know what I mean? Because Reinhardt explained to her everything, how to use the washing machine, every method that you could use. The idea of ice water method is a method patent, much harder to get than a regular patent for equipment. It's a pharmaceutical patent. What he discovered, that with simple agitation, right, you could remove the trichomes as undamaged as possible and collect the oils, and then process it, have it collected in a cruet, and the cruet you separated from the machine, and then you poured it in a 5-micron coffee filter, a pharmaceutical filter, 5-micron, and then the first thing you'll notice is on top of the water there's oil. There's the oil, right? And I have pictures of it. You'll see it. The oil floats on top of the water. The oil floats on top of the water when you put it in the cruet, and then you see the oil go back completely into the hash. So you lose nothing. But when you use a 25-micron bag, you get an instant result, but it's less 20-30% of the oils that you've released in the system. The high time will go, oh, wait until use the 73-micron bag, and then you'll catch all the heads. And when you catch all the heads with the 50-micron bag, it may look impressive, but they're empty heads. Yeah, they melt right away, but that's it. All the stuff was released in the method. You know what I mean? So I actually have a photo on my Facebook page that you should put up. It shows the water floating on top of the oil, slick, and then the resin glands collected at the bottom. That oil slick, which is about 30% of all the important terpenes and everything, because you have idiots like High Time saying, "Oh, don't forget those small terpenes. Just go for the big heads. Well, those terpenes are the flavonoids. Those are the important terpenes. Those oils are the medicine. And then when you use a bucket, if you don't process it correctly, at the inside of your bucket is sticky. That's where your dope is. They'll tell you, oh, then Mila was very successful with his isolator bag because it brought back some quality that was good enough. It wasn't hashish, right? So then the Bubble Man came out with his own kit, which was a 3-bag kit. Oh, at shows where the Bubble Man was showing his bags and Mila, they were like throwing knives at each other. They were rip-roaring, screaming at one another. See, Reinhardt Delp sent me to Europe to investigate, as a consultant, to investigate every company that was copying his patent. So I went to all the booths and just and found out who was who was using his method to sell nylon at wedding dress prices. I did that for him. In fact, when I went to Switzerland, or to Switzerland first, I think there was the first time that I was involved with industrial spies. Because I went there to investigate that scene for Reinhardt. So to this a woman and her daughter, and I was there with Reinhardt's son, his young son. So they sent a young girl, the daughter, and the not so old, older, not as old as me, lady, to like befriend us. The first time I met him, I said, you know what? You're an industrial spy. And she was taken aback. She said, and then she got friendly with us. She invited us to her house in Basel. We've stayed with her. Then from Basel, we went to this big show in Spain. I guess it was Madrid or Barcelona. I think it was Barcelona. And so in Barcelona, I was on the radio, and I speak terrible Spanish, but it's getting better. It's gotten much better since in those days. And I'm talking on the radio, and I start talking Dutch marketing fraud. That she grabbed the microphone out of my mouth, out of my hand, and shut the radio interview down. Okay. So, I mean, at that point, I knew, so I reported back to Reinhardt, and he filed a major lawsuit, and it took years. They danced around him and everything. And finally, they got the bubble man into court. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, I'll tell you about Bubble Man in court. I have no respect for fucking Reinhardt. He always lied to me. He wouldn't tell me 100%. If he would have told me 100%, and listen, and if I would have known, I would have stopped him from doing some stupid shit that he did. And here's one of them. He got the Bubble Man in court, and he let him off the hook. The Bubble Man agreed to pay him like $100,000 or some way, but he said, he had told me at the time, he didn't tell me. Man, I would have taken that guy to the cleaners. I would have fucking sued him for his fucking underwear with the ripoff that he did, and still doing it today to young people like you guys who don't know squat about cannabis, right? They're selling you that bag technique over. You can just go to the internet and put bubble bags. The first 10 pages on the internet is that ripoff. So all the newbies coming in are buying into that bullshit. Oh, they say, oh, you get 5 different kinds of hash or 9 different kinds of hash. No, you don't. You get 5 or 9 different pieces of trichomes broken up in various sizes and contaminated with plant matter in varying degrees. You get green. When you look at your trichome, do you see fucking green? No, you see clear, cloudy, and amber. So to promote their bullshit bags so that you got a bigger amount of garbage, basically, they promoted this thing that, oh, you got to go for the big heads and the 73 micron bag. Oh, you know what I mean? What? And telling you don't pay attention to the little trichomes. Just go for the big ones. The little trichomes are the most important ones. They took the little trichomes out of marijuana. Now you have all THC. This has been a game the whole time. When he finally had the Bubble Man was making videos as if he invented the ice water method, and as if he invented the ice water method. That would have incensed me. Of course, I would have taken a meeting with Jeffrey Guy, the head of GW Pharmaceuticals, when he offered me $1.5 million for my hippie patent. I would have at least had lunch. Right? Or no, I'm going to give it to the people. I'm going to give it to the people. Everybody should know this. Yeah, and they ripped you off and until the last dying day when you died of a haircut of a heart attack because you stressed yourself out your whole life. With his wife Viola, you can imagine this, Viola telling him in Amsterdam, you can't trust this Mila. Don't do business. Don't sign that contract. Oh, she's the biggest hash person because Mila had created a pollinator, which is a machine, a tumbler that tumble with 150 micron screen on it that you can tumble your weed and separate the trichomes. The trick to that is knowing when to stop it, because if you can also introduce green into that too. It's an old technique that the Lebanese have used, and she copied it. She's a copyist. She's not anything. She hasn't invented anything. So anyway, that started it when they started copying Mila's isolator bags. Then you had Bubble Man. Then you had Triple X. You had so many bag companies that it was like crazy. It was like crazy. There was like 10 companies that I had, 10 or maybe even more companies I had researched to be part of this lawsuit. But when he had Bubble Man by the balls, I would have cut his balls off. I'm a different guy. I'm from Brooklyn. I don't put up with that punk shit. You know what I mean? And I would have done something. I would have gone beyond their realm of reality and just showed them what was what. But they ripped that guy off so bad, and he wouldn't tell me the truth. He wouldn't tell me the truth. I couldn't believe it. If he would have told me that, I would have said, don't do it, man. The guy's a fucking billionaire. Take everything you can get now. He won in court in Canada. He could have taken everything that guy owned, and he didn't, because he thought he was going to get more money in the end by getting agreements with everybody else and being paid off by everybody else. Dude, I would have taken that cat to the cleaners. That's just how I would have done it. And in the end, I was right, he was wrong, and I couldn't trust him because he wouldn't tell me the shit he was doing that was so stupid that I even now to this day, I have nothing good to say. I have some good things to say about Reinhardt, and I have some other things to say about him that he had no vision. Reinhardt has done a lot for the industry, which I will talk to about Reinhard Delp in the end of this conversation, but his name is going to come through with this. So they came out with 7 bags, 5 bags, 9 bags, and they were making so much money selling nylon at a wedding dress prices that even Cervantes came out. He was going to create a 15 bag kit. When he said that, I wrote my book. I wrote the bubble bag fraud, and so I killed his idea right then. I mean, because they ruined the reputation of hashish, and now they sell BHO. And dude, I make hashish so much better than any of your BHO people. I've even tested it against the top BHO, and they can't even come close to what I make, because I make a full spectrum hashish. So I had one guy, the professor. He turned me on to his BHO garbage. I turned him on to a hit which he dabbed. It's pure melt. He said that's the highest I've ever been on THC. So they're selling this whole technique, and there's all at the same time they're creating other products that are stronger, so they can get you hooked on that instead of teaching you how to make the real natural medicine, which was hashish. Hashish. The Alexander the Great, all those people, they used hashish as for PTSD, for relaxation, and those were indica plants. So Bubble Man, the biggest ripoff liar. I'll tell you, I did the first Toker's Bowl up in Canada, and I had done a Vajrakila ceremony against Betty Sembler, the lady who came out with Straight Incorporated. They would take potheads and the parents would think that they were doing their kid good and send their kid who smoked a couple of joints to this to this school where they were tortured. And they got more money. That Straight Incorporated got more money from the Reagan administration than any company, and that money was free. Straight Incorporated. So Straight Incorporated was going to give a speech. Betty Sembler was coming to Toronto, so I protested Betty Sembler at the marijuana day there, and I did it in front of our hotel, and I did a. It's you know, I had a glass plate, and in the plate I did the basically I sealed her in hell, and when she'll never be able to get out of that hell for what she's done to cannabis. I did a Shiva Vajrakila ceremony just to make sure that she doesn't come back again. And so anyway, I had a big, a big ceremony. I did that from a new moon to a full moon, and so I did the speech at the march, and so we're standing there at the march. I was the only one that was nearly arrested at the march. I'm standing there, and two detectives come from the RCMP, and they said, "Was that a direct threat to Betty Sembler?" I said, "No, that's a direct threat to all you prohibitionists." And so they couldn't arrest me. So at that show, I got a free booth at the Toker's Bowl, and guess what? They put me next to the Bubble Man because I'm the experienced guy, and they wanted to rub off on, oh look, I got this guy, and he's gonna, So I first thing I realized that the bags were being made in Nepal. I said, man, why would they? That day I didn't know the information that I would become to know. So so I was at the Toker Bowl. I walked in there. I didn't have a lot of money, but I looked good. I had designer clothes on. I had my ostrich boots on, and I looked like a rich dealer, except I had no money. So Mark Emery took a look at my boots, and he said, "Man, if he can, he's looked at me. He says, oh, that guy can afford to pay." I mean, I looked good, but I didn't have any money. But I sold books. I did the thing there. I sat next to the Bubble Man, watching his demonstration of his hash bag routine. And at the end of the show, he had run out of pot. He said, "Man, let me have that ounce you got. I'll give it back to you as soon as the show was over. I'll just pay you back." So, being a good guy, I gave him the ounce thinking he was going to give it back. And then the show ended. And I said, "Hey, man, how about my ounce?" He said, "Why should I give you an ounce, man? Haven't I given you enough at this show?" That was my introduction to the Bubble Man.
Total prick.
He was a real scumbag. A real scum. He made some hash. It was just out of regs. It was just so bad that I couldn't even fucking believe it. So to be after this guy, I had already experienced that guy. Well, I'll tell you a little anecdote. When I came back from that trip from Canada, I went through some place in Montana, going back down to Denver. I was living in Colorado at the time, and they stopped me at U.S. Customs because I had a pack of papers. I didn't have any weed, but I had a pack of papers. So they ripped me apart. They saw all my Afghani hats, all my books, everything. And while I was sitting there watching them rip me apart and that kind of stuff, I saw two trucks that with those tool compartments in the back, right through. They went through the customs so quick. I'm sitting there. I'm watching customs pull past 300 pounds or 200 pounds in those trucks. So while they were taking their attention to me and writing a report on we stopped this guy and they didn't bust me. They passed two loads right through customs, right through me. Both of the trucks were loaded. Obviously, you know what I mean? That's how it was in those days. A lot of stuff coming down from Canada. So Bubble Man has continued, even though we won him. Well, finally we won in court because we have a patent. How can he have videos on YouTube saying teaching you how to use those bags, right? So that bag fraud continues to go on. This guy the ancient tradition of making hash, dude. Frenchy cannoli, I know he's dead, but a good thing. The thing that he's teaching people how to make hash, but he had this expensive, elaborate ice machine that will refrigerate the material, and it turned the material around, and then when it went out a spigot where the material would come out, and what did they put underneath that? Bags. Why would you spend $5,000 on that machine only to have to put it under bags, to process it through bags? Because bags is an industry now. They're using those bags for everything. So they're selling nylon, Dutch Shell is laughing all the way to the bank. They're selling nylon at wedding dress prices. They've taken control of the market of like different micron screens, but now you can get them from China, but you have to special order them. There's parts of the industry where they just come in, and because they were first, they sort of like in it. Like Gavita has all their stuff made in China now. They're about 25% of the cost that they used to be. But Bubble Man is the biggest fraudster that ever lived. That he has a program on TV called the Hash Church, when he's never taught anybody how to make hash. The Frenchy cannoli, he learned how to make hash in the mountains in India, and all he ever learned was watching everybody do basically a hand rub the plants, and then scrape off the stuff off their hands and roll it into a ball.
Well, right? What they're doing now in America is every piece of hash, no matter how they produce it, if they roll it into a ball, they're calling it a temple ball. I'm like, well, what fucking temple did that come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit.
It's total bullshit, but the kids don't know better. It's not bullshit that they're trying to bullshit you. It's just that they don't know. They have no clue. They've been taught wrong. It's hard not to call them idiots. It's hard not, but they don't know. They never took a horticultural class in themselves. They might have taken biology 101, but they didn't pay attention. So the Bubble Man is the chief fraudster. He's been making money off of those bags now 20 years.
He has Dave Watson on his show, yeah?
Who?
He has Dave Watson on his show as a guest regularly, but he never shows his face. He's always in the camera. He's always got a little puppet of a monkey or something.
Yeah, that's him at the same time creating mystery about himself, but at the same time protecting himself because he doesn't want anyone to know what he really looks like.
Yeah.
Because you're in Asia, in Europe, your life is worthless. I mean, it's just your life is worth a certain amount of money. I mean, just how that
I
is.
thought it interesting that of all, Bubble Man and Dave Watson, Sam Skunk Man are in league together today.
Oh yeah, and he's gone. Well, it's the same thing with people used to go to a Skunk Man to get sort of like qualified that you're one of his group. I mean, it was prestigious to be studying with Skunk Man and working for him for free at Hortiform. That was it. And the Skunk Man and him. I mean, and then the next thing that the Skunk Man tried to do is try to take credit for bags that he showed Mila how to do it or this or that. And whenever anybody does anything new, he'll say, "Oh no, I wrote about that and I did that first." That's how he is. See, he wants to be known. He wants to be known as the fucking Shiva. He ain't Shiva, dude. He ain't fucking Shiva. He's a fucking narc, man. Now you got to remember, they're admitted that they were narcs in Grow magazine. They said, let's get behind this, but yes, the scientists worked along with law enforcement. Right, you were DEA scientists, and he's heavily involved in Canada. He's doing something with a Canadian company, Watson. He was, he's on their board or something. I told you he was on the board of Phylos Bioscience. So I mean, he gets around. He was. I have one guy I'm going to talk to in a minute about Don Land. Don Land had some visitors come to Bangkok with his new THC Foundation, and who was sitting there in that group was Watson and Clark. Well, I mean, Clark wrote writes in the World Drug Report, the UN World Drug Report. How do you do that and not be police?
100%.
You know what I mean? And so this whole scene, and so these guys have gotten power and they're cool. They say, oh man, I got Watson there. He used to be, well, maybe he's a retired this or whatever, but that's some power because they even call him as a top breeder. The only breeder that those guys ever know was the University of Mississippi. That's where that X13 came from. That's where that shit came from. That's where all of fucking Watson stuff came from. That's where when he came to Amsterdam with seeds, that's where those seeds came from that stock. And you could tell right away because he selfed them. Why would you self them? I mean, if you have land-raised seeds, a collection, you just replicate them, right? But he selfed them. See, he's been feminizing seeds from day one, and you only learned that at the University of Mississippi, and so those things, the whole story of, I got arrested, and when I got out on bail, I had thrown the seeds in a garbage bin, and I retrieved them, and then I made my way to Amsterdam. I mean, that's all fantasy.
Yeah.
These guys were invented. Everybody who was busted, every major load coming into America, right? They got samples and they sent them to the University of Mississippi, and Mississippi replicated them and analyzed them and found out what the efficacy was of the different plants, because they were the only place in the world they had full control. They were the cops, when they busted them, samples would go immediately to them. They have everything there. And that's where Watson learned, and that's where they first learned about separating the gene, the trichomes and the cannabinoids, separating the cannabinoids. That's where they learned how to do that. That's where I mean, if you go past 1940 and you see how big the cannabis industry, natural business industry was. I mean, you just got to take a look at the factory that Parker Davis Pfizer had in Detroit. It was on the Detroit River with vats as big as a brewery. It was brewery tanks. I mean, it was huge. It was huge industry, and there was like 20 companies that were in cannabis-based medicine. Those companies, Pfizer, Lilly, they all made their money on cannabis-based medicines. Now they're selling you chemical concocted copies. They made Mother Nature illegal. Now they sell you chemical concocted copies. But Bubble Man is total scum. I mean, he's just exploited. He's exploited everybody because of what they know. People think they're making hash using those bags. They're not. They're not. And so he's gotten away with it, but hasn't done the damage that Skunk Man has done.
Well, I've heard the little asshole talk some shit about me on some episodes. I didn't listen to it all, but somebody said,
didn't you hear? I'm a CIA agent and a DEA agent, and I'm a snitch. Yeah, I snitched them. I exposed you, bitch.
He's just a little fucking munchkin.
Yeah. Okay, then now we're going to go to Ethan Russo.
Okay.
Ethan Russo is part of that clique. He's a professor at the University of Missouri, Missoula in Montana. So he's been in that clique. He's the one that got the samples from the early weed discoveries in China, right? When they found these shamans' tombs, and they had pots of weed there so that they can smoke in their afterlife. and all that shit. They analyzed those seeds. Those seeds, you know who got those seeds? The skunk man has those seeds. The Russia had a hemp museum, and they had, because hemp was a huge industry in the 19th century into the beginning of the 20th century. It was a huge industry, and they also grew hemp for food. They use, like, people use sesame seeds on their salad. People would use hemp seeds on their salad. It was part of the food chain. And all this stuff, they had a hemp museum with all those samples, and people have been trying to get in there to get at those samples. The only one that I know that might have gotten in there has been the skunk man.
Well, I've heard he's got seeds from every find that they make anywhere, including like Egyptian mummies and things like this.
Oh yeah, that's right. He gets those, and he gets those through Ethan Russo, because Ethan Russo has the credentials to be able to go to China and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Ethan Russo is a total scumbag. He's selling hemp strain trichomes, terpenes, right? Like, he'll have a terpene, and he'll say this is from Durban poison hemp plant. The people here on this end will take that terpene, that terpene, and put it into THCV oil and sell it to you as Durban poison. It's just ridiculous. I mean, so he's selling these terpenes. Oh, this is a blueberry, because you can't have hemp. You can't have marijuana in Montana. So he has done a big study on hemp, and some of the hemps do have the same flavonoids. So he gets those flavonoids from the hemp plants. Because he's, has a laboratory and everything. He finds out where those terpenes are, and he takes them from the hemp plant, puts them and gives them to you as blueberry terpenes, or Dutch Durban poison terpenes. So I had one guy here, an Indian guy, and another thing is, here in the petroleum industry, they're not pumping as much gas as they were, and there are a lot of jobs that were made available for people who went and worked for petroleum in the petroleum industry. When they came out, they were scientists. When they came out, instead of working with petroleum, they started working with cannabis. So you'll find them in Oklahoma, these guys that were in the petroleum industry. Now they're in the cannabis oil and their processing industry. They never get high. They don't get high, don't taste shit. So when they listen to Russo, well, I'll just make some THC oil, make it good and strong, and I'll just put some Durban poison terpenes in there and call it Durban poison. That's what's happening, and Russo is totally behind that. So they've figured out every way, every fucking angle, the way to make a penny off a pot. By the way, people are saying, well, I'll get to that later. But Russo is a major devil, because he's really, I mean, how the fuck does David Watson have the pull where he can get samples of the seeds that they got in China that were buried there 5,000 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, you don't think he's a police?
Police and worse, probably.
Oh yeah, when you think about Watson and Clark and the information they gathered for the law enforcement, they've put tens of thousands of people that went in jail because of that shit. And they have all the drug samples, so they can come into court as they have witnesses that come into court. What do they call them? Paid witnesses, and they I mean, you can just imagine the kind of trickery is going down.
Definitely.
Because people don't have any information, and the information is being controlled by the lack of Ed Rosenthal, who has the publishing company, Bronk Dronkers, who has publishing companies in Europe, Mel Frank, because he has no publishing companies, another one in California. These are the ones, these are the players, and they can say, well, we have Ethan Russo, the PhD professor from the University of Missoula, and all this kind of stuff. They have all the credentials, but they're not one of us.
No.
You know what I mean? They're not one of us. You know what I mean? And basically, they've been planning that since before the 40s, when cannabis became legal. They didn't have a patent anymore. Then they made it illegal. That's why you see. That's how you see why you see it was illegal. Now you're realizing it. Could be how quickly it didn't last very long, did it?
No.
Well, anyway, Don Land is my next little subject right here. Is Don Land is a guy who's THC Foundation in Bangkok. He's married to a Thai princess or the servant of a Thai, whatever. But he has royal connections. He read my book, The 15-Ounce Pound, and when he read my book, he used that as material to help pass the medical marijuana law in Thailand. So now everybody can grow in Thailand, right? So he promised me a honorary degree, be on his board, all this other stuff, and then he never followed through. He never followed through. And in fact, one time I saw a picture of him. He had a group of people meeting him in Thailand from other companies, and who was in that picture? David Watson and Robert Connolly Clark, because they were interested. What's he doing in Thailand? Their major interest is cannabis, where it's going, what it's doing, who's doing what, what's doing who. You know what I mean? That's how they play the game. So Don proved to be very, very unreliable as far as keeping his word. And then now he's using my books, my information, and selling it and promoting it and talking about it as if it was him. You know, as if it was him. You know, and then he states, I was the one that did the Thai pot scene and on the Thai scene. Dude, that was all my boys, dude. The Thai scene was over quick because it's a very tight-knit scene. And when Brian Daniels went down with 72 tons on the Oregon Beaver, he did 30 years. And he just got out of jail recently. And I expected, they wrote one book about him, about the biggest marijuana syndicate of all time. And they got a book and he's all over it. He was the one that brought Mexican and all kinds of seeds that were collected in California and brought them to Laos. When Thailand became illegal in 1980, they started taking people's land away and shit. It all went over to Laos, and he reseeded everybody. When you go to Laos, in the market, you'll see California green, red pot, gold pot. You know what I mean? It's all there. The only time you get any real Laos is if you go up to Luang Prabang, closer to China, and you still have some original strains from people who grow weed to eat, because the Lao eat it in their soups and stuff. They use it as a spice and an herb, and in their happy soup, But yeah, Don Land is now he's going around, but I have a lot of friends in Thailand, and he overstepped his bound. So nowadays he's sort of persona non grata and on everybody's shit list, and nobody talks highly of him whatsoever. Okay, so Don Land is somebody, but then now we're going to get to Phylos. Bioscience. I like the idea of being able to DNA sequencing my stuff. That way I could prove I had prior art. You know what I mean? So that's why I did it, especially with some of my really, really good strength. But then in the middle of this, I found out that, that something was amiss. They had a different agenda than what they talked about. They'll tell you that this is their agenda, and basically in the back, they have another agenda. And so he proved to be disappointing. But the only thing I can tell you is that, these scientists, they told me that he lived in a hippie commune. He tried to play that up. So, so I would, feel like maybe, he's one of the kids, you know what I mean? His partner Mowgli opened up his mouth And when he did that, the fortunes of Phylos went down. That and COVID. COVID's all the people that he used to be able to hire out of college now working in the medical industry with COVID. So he lost a lot of people to work, and I won't have anything sequenced by him. In the future, if I do any sequencing, I'll have somebody to do it myself, to do it here. And I'll have somebody here tissue culture myself. You can't fucking trust anybody on this scene, dude. Everybody thinks that they're gonna make. Another thing I don't like is that when you hire an electrician, you hire a plumber or somebody, and you think they immediately find out you're a cannabis producer. They think that you're minting money. And they're not, man. People, I taught 12 and 1, and people are producing the flower industry. When they came to one of my talks in Las Vegas, they said, Pietri, you're telling everybody everything that you say is true, but why are you telling them that? We're taking this industry over. They can produce the quality buds that we all want at 168 a pound. Who's going to beat it? The only people who are going to beat it are the people who know how to grow that way. You know what I mean? So I spoke to somebody yesterday. They said the price of really quality greenhouses is like $300 a pound, and really quality indoor $6, maybe $8. 5 years ago, it was $5,000 a pound, $4,000 a pound. Those days are over. So people who think they want to get in the cannabis industry, get ready for one thing: losing money. I have seen so many people lose money come into the cannabis scene. First of all, they play totally into Dutch marketing fraud because they never learned how to grow cannabis. They never picked up a horticultural book in their lives. So a lot of things and then of course, so much was left out of the grow books, so that you spend more and grow less. Somebody wrote me, how I'm going to read that for you here soon, what he wrote, but I won't talk about it now. The Phylos, now they're selling feminized seeds. Now they're selling feminized hemp seeds because they don't want to sell you regular hemp seeds because they don't want you to replicate it.
But it was that arsehole Jodry who brought Phylos to the cannabis community.
Well, a lot of people brought stuff to. All you need is
but he was very central in promoting them and getting people to submit genetics to them for sequencing.
I never heard of Kevin. I've heard of him before because he's always trying to get onto my website. A lot of people get onto my website and then start spooling. You know how many people have either just out and out copied me and what I say, and now they're the ones that are doing this. I had one guy write a book, The Garden of Peace, Dan Bowen, and he wrote my technique. And I said, well, 1 minute here. I said, you're gonna write my technique, I'm gonna have to write the entry to that book. And I got him a publisher and got him I didn't get him endorsement deals, but I gave him a tumbler. I used to endorse O'Keefe tumblers, much better than anything that Mila made. And I used to give those machines away to people I liked. I had dozens of machines that they never gave me any money, but they gave me a lot of machines. I could have sold them, but I'm not that type of person. I just passed them out amongst my good people. So it's a crazy scene. You can't trust anybody, and then everybody that comes on thinks that they know about horticulture. They know how to grow because they grew pot and it was good. Well, any idiot can grow pot. It's a fucking weed, dude. If you take 10 seeds and you put them on a hill, and the hill is fertile and it gets rained occasionally, if you leave it there alone for 5 years, you'll have a mountain full of weed on its own. It just replicates itself. If you go to Kazakhstan, you see they have a state area in Kazakhstan that's the size of Rhode Island. It's all weed growing wild. Nobody fertilizes it. It's just been growing like that forever. So everybody was taught wrong here, man. Bowen, I get a lot of attention. Bowen wasn't getting it, and he shouldn't get it. He didn't fucking invent anything. He didn't make up the paradigm. That's my paradigm. Nobody can ever take it away from me, because that was the only way that I could get through Dutch marketing fraud. Reinhardt was right on one subject, that you need to make things simple so that people understand them. So with Phylos, I was very disappointed that I was just another thing that I found that, oh man, that who can you trust, man? Who can you trust? And on my scenes in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, everybody knew one another, everybody loved one another, and you could trust your friend because, man, you went to school with him, and he's the only one that knows, and him, and you know what I mean? It was more of there was much more love in those days, because we were unbrainwashing people. Now everybody's brainwashed again. They got brainwashed by Dutch marketing fraud. And the only way that I could break through that was with coming up with a paradigm that was catchy enough and made sense enough for people to try it and do it. And now it's mainstream. I've cost the Dutch, billions and billions and billions of dollars. So yeah, it was a very disappointing thing with Phylos, because I like Nishan. He seems to be a nice guy. I talked to him for hours and stuff, and all this other stuff. And I found it very funny that David Watson was on his board. I said, "What the hell is that guy doing?" And then they started up the cannabis dynamic maps with the first variety as skunk number 1. 150 years from now, 100 years from now, skunk number 1 will be the original strain of all time. And everyone will have forgotten Acapulco Gold, Michoacan, Punta Roja, Durban Poison. All that'll be a mute point because they'll have corrupted everything. That's their plan. But people like you and people like me are bringing back the old school methods and teaching people really how to grow. So with that was a disappointing thing, that I couldn't even trust Nishan. And I know these people by first name basis, So now I'm going to do my 12-in-1 class, and this is a direct aid to all growers. After I give you the teaching, you apply the knowledge that I give you, you can save as much as 60 to 75% of your production costs, and at the same time, improve your production by 30%. Okay? And here I'm going to read you something that somebody wrote. I have an army. It's called Joe Pietri's 12-1 Army. And we've been teaching this now more than a decade. He says, I ran 12-12 and 6-18 together. They ran it side by side. 12-12, average grams was 450 to 500 grams a plant. 6-18, less light. 6 hours on, 18 off. He got 550 grams to 600 grams. Okay. Same nutrients, same genetics, same medium, same lights, with better shaped plants. When I put clones out, they don't flip on reveg or reveg like on 18-6. So people were told to take clones and then put them on 18-6, and they immediately flowered. You know what I mean? And they acted. Well, it says right here. They re-vegged like on 18-6. They flipped. So if that don't tell you something, I don't know what will. So anyway, this is a straight up horticultural technique. This is how they grow chrysanthemums. When your plants are stretching, they're stretching to the light. And then when you put them on 18-6, and then when you put them on 12-12, they're stretching for a light fix. You've made light junkies. The whole thing about horticulture is growing the premium plant at the lowest common denominator. And this is what you're going to learn today. 12, this is in veg. You put 12 hours on, 5.5 off, 1 hour on, 5.5 off. The 1 hour on in the middle of the light break does not allow the PFR quality to diminish enough for it to induce flowering. The plants stay in veg, and you have faked the plant to have 2 nights rest, so it grows bigger and faster. This is how they grow chrysanthemums in the floral industry. And so you get a bigger plant faster, which would took you 4 weeks in veg before now takes you 2 weeks, 6 weeks. And your room is not as hot. You're not using as much electricity. You're losing a third. You're using a third of the electricity you were using before. You don't have to you're not using electricity on your air conditioning system to keep it cold because the rooms are cooler. You're doing less work because the rooms are cooler and the lights aren't just evaporating the water and nutrients that you're putting into the soil. So you're using less and you're working less. Now, when I did the 12-in-1 and realized, wow, this really works, then I said, well, how far can I do it? And that's the difference. People talk a game, but they never do it. This I've done myself, and I wrote an article behind it, which is less light, more weight. And they were threatened that they would be all Dutch fraud, all Dutch marketing will be cut. Advertisement will be cut from their magazine, which was about 60% of their revenue. So this one technique cost the light industry billions and billions of dollars. So I did it. I did half hour on, half hour off, half hour on, half hour off over 6 hours. And then I did 5.5 off, 1 hour on, 5.5 off. At this point, I've cut the plant, your light schedule down to 13 hours. Now I'm cutting it down to 7 hours. And guess what? The plant stayed in veg. I said, well, how far can I take it? So the next thing I did 15 hours on, 45 minutes off over the course of 12 hours. Then I did 5.5 off, 1 hour on, 5.5 off. Wow, the plant stayed in veg. And I said, well, how far can I do it? I put a strobe light, 15 watts in my grow room, in my veg room. The plant stayed in veg. Once you see that done, you know, somebody's been lying to me, man. So what I taught, and now there's been a bigger, before the thing that another plus was that it helped you conceal your grow. It was good for guerrilla growers that were growing indoors. You know, they could put their lights on at night and use it for heating their house. And the lights are off during the day with the 1 hour light break around noon. So it saved people money there. So then I said to myself, well, what about flower? So what I did with flower, I did from 12, then I did 11, 13. And the plants were bigger. I did 10 on, 14 off. Plants were bigger. And I went to 9 and 4 and 15. Then I went down to 8. And then I read an article about how much light a plant gets in Mother Nature. They never get more than 8 hours of light. They get like 7 and change direct sunlight all together in a sunset to sunrise, the sunrise to sunset sun. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put them on 8 hours. All right. And I put it on 8 hours. Man, the plants weren't locked at all. There was no photosynthesis protection. It didn't shut off the CO2 intake, nothing. And then I did it down to 7 on and the rest off. And then I did 6 on, 18 off. 6 on, 18 off is a schedule that I recommend because it uses the least amount of electricity. And just like this guy said here, he used 6 on, 18 off, and he got 550 to 600 grams. When you were doing 12 and 12, he was getting 450 and 600. Some plants work super well with only 6 hours of light, but never more than 8 hours, because the lights go into photosynthesis protection and shuts off the CO2 intake. Now you can tell as a farmer, you can tell that because your plant begins to droop. When your plants droop, it's time for you to shut your lights off. So now you've saved a third of your energy of your electric bill in grow, right? The first thing that you see in grow when you do 12 and 1 is that your plants are happier. 2, the next thing you see is that instead of growing up to the light, it's growing outward, so you have more bud sites and you have a bigger plant. That's the first thing. Then the second thing, third thing that you see is your electric bill has been reduced 40%. Your production costs have been reduced. You're not working as hard. With 8 on, 16 off, or 6 on, 18 off, which and there might be some plants that do better under 7 hours, but never more than 8. 8 is the limit. In flower, let's say you're using the 6 on, 18 off, you're using 25. You're using half of the electricity that you used before. You've cut your electric bill 50%. And you're getting, again, 450 to 500 grams on 12 and 12, and 618, they got 550 and 600 grams. This is from one of my students. And once you go to my schedules, you'll never go back, because you'll be able to reduce your plant costs. I had one, again, I'll reiterate this story, is that I had one Pistol Point. They brought a big grow to Oregon indoors, and for the first 2 years or so, they did great because the price of weed was really high. Now that the price of weed has gone like the price of tomatoes, those guys are out of business. I could have kept them in business if they would have just learned my techniques. I have saved so many people for going out of business because they couldn't afford the fucking power bills and electric bills and all this other stuff. That I can count, literally thousands of people. So the people that are putting out indoor for 600 and 800 a pound are using my techniques. They're in my army, So in veg, in flour, you're losing 50% just on your electricity, and so now you're not using as much nutrients. You're not working as hard because you're not watering it all the time. You know what I mean? You have less problems because you have less heat. The heat is what brings bugs. So you have less problems. A plant, you're growing plants that have never been stressed. When you're doing 18 and 6, you're stressing your plant out to the max. A plant grows in the sleep. Some people are putting them on 24 hours on the 1000s and then doing 12 and 12. Those people are not farmers. Those people have just been reading High Times too much. So now you're losing 50% of your electric costs in flour. You're getting more production. You're doing less work, right? And at that point, you're saving your production costs between 75 and 60% of your costs before, when you were on 12 and 12 and 18 and 6, and you got more pot. It increases your production 30%. Less light, more weight. Plants grow when they sleep. So I've taught this now. No, I'll tell you, I had one guy, he copied, he wrote a book about it. I got him a publisher. I did this, and he was trying to create his own thing. I'm very strict in my group. I have a group. You can join it on Facebook. It's called Joe Pietri's 12-1 Advanced Growing Techniques. And there you can see all the results of people who have been doing my technique. But I don't take newbies. If you come on and you don't have basic growing knowledge, I delete you. And people say, why are you deleting? They're trying to learn. I said, well, they need to learn somewhere else because I just don't have time for it. I'm 100 years old. So this guy, he all of a sudden he cut me loose, and now he wrote another book, but doesn't have my name on it, but it has me in there that I'm the one that created the stuff. Basically, the only thing that Reinhard Delp ever did for me, he sent me to Europe and all this other kind of places. He only knew about me because my book came out in German, and then that's how I got connected to him. And then I sort of became associated with him. Was that he told me this, and I'm not trying to piss people off. I'm just tell you what this guy, who I basically think he's a genius, when he made the hash method, the hash water method, but business wise, no. He said to me, Americans, the photoperiodic control, which is basically what I just taught you. That's taught in biology 101. Most of you are college educated. You've probably taken biology 101 and you didn't pay attention. You should pay attention sometimes. That's a major aspect of being able to grow year round. The Dutch say, that's the old gas lantern routine, because in the 19th century, the Dutch discovered that if they put, and they discovered it because they were trying to keep their grow plants in the winter, so they would put these gas lanterns out there in their glass houses to keep them warm in the winter, to keep the temperature up. And then they realized that, the plants stayed in veg all the time that we had the gas lights in there. So they got to be able to grow bigger plants, right? That's not photoperiodism. Photoperiodism was discovered by two Americans, one of them being Alliard. I forget the other guy's name. And they discovered that plants have 3 different grow periods. One is your springtime flowers, your opium. Your springtime flowers. That's long day, short night. Cannabis, rice, tomatoes are long day, short night. They only flower in the winter when the light changes. When the light goes under 12 and 12, that's when those plants flip. Some genetics are bred because they flip sooner. You have some plants that finish in September. You have some plants that finish in October. You have some, and you have some plants that don't finish until January. They take 4 months to finish. But one thing you'll notice about 12-1 is that everything finishes faster, bigger, because they've been teaching you how to spend more, grow less. They're not teaching you all the shortcuts, all the way of growing the great weed. They want you to spend money on electricity, your bulb blow out, spend money on nutrients because your room is too hot. Oh, you got mites because your room is too hot. Oh, here's some bug spray. Oh, that's the whole aspect of Dutch marketing fraud. They didn't teach you how to grow. You go to a farmer who knows how to grow and you tell him how you grow, he'll laugh at you. So I was at that in Las Vegas giving this teaching, and a decade ago, and the scientists were there. They immediately said, "Why do you even bother teaching that to these kids?" But I taught it because I want everybody to be able to grow their medicine as inexpensively as possible on their own, without having to deal with pharmaceutical companies or going to dispensaries or that whole thing. So the 12-1 technique is the most important growing technique that you'll ever learn. You need to apply it right away. Don't be afraid of it. I'm going to tell you right now, stop using feminized seeds. Stop using auto-flowering seeds. They're garbage. At any point in your grow, they can hermy on you, and instead of growing a plant, a garden full of buds, you have a garden full of seeds. I had one lady come to a dispensary. In those days, the dispensaries rented desks, and everybody got like a space to sell, and you sold to the public if they had a license. And so I had a booth, and I'm selling weed, and the owner of that dispensary came up to me and said, "Joe, tell this lady. I don't want to have to tell this lady this, but I know." You're the only one that can explain it. So I went to her. She had three big glass containers of AK-47. It was all seeded. And I said, well, what happened? It's all seeded. There's nothing we can do with that. That's not sellable. She said, well, what about the seeds? What about the seeds? Can I sell the seeds? I said, no, you can't sell the seeds because those are hermaphrodite. Those will be more hermaphrodite in the next generation than they are now. Okay, I had another guy selling auto flowers, and this is a major grow in Oregon. His plants were 10 to 15 pound yielders. I have a plant that the mother was 14 and a half pound yielder. Okay, and he's growing these used plants. He's growing 1,000 plants, 600 of those plants a year for 100 patients. He's got 600 plants of 10 pounds. He's going to get, he's going to get like 7,000 a pound, 7,000 pounds. And at the same time, he's only accountable to the people who he supplies the medicine to for 1.5 to 2.5 pounds a year. I mean, how much pot can you smoke? And he paid for the licensing and the fees and everything. So the patient would just sign over the licenses to them, and they didn't care about anything. They just wanted their stuff, and that's how it went. So he says, this young kid, like you're saying, he's 27 years old or whatever. He says to the farmer, he says, man, you can still grow my autoflowers underneath those big plants, and you'll have you'll have more crop, more production. He did that. Those plants hermied, and they hermied his whole plantation. 600 acres, 600 plants, 1,000 plants were hermied. Listening to that young kid who didn't know what he does know is how to sell himself on the internet as being Joe Marijuana, or I'm Cannabis Joe or some shit. You know what I mean? I mean, it's ridiculous. But it's that's one of the reasons that I'm not selling seeds anymore. I'm tired of these young punks that, and they have no respect, no scruples. No, you know what I mean? Who needs it? So now I'm back to growing my own weed. I've got my THCV line, which you're going to be hearing about it in the future. And basically, I really, really have to love you to sell you seeds nowadays. Because I'm not putting up with the bullshit. You're lucky to fucking know me is my attitude nowadays, because they know nothing. I mean, I've been selling weed since 1963. There hasn't been a kind of weed I haven't sold. And then the other day, I talking to Jeff, I said I checked Philos for mimosa. It was half hemp. They got these kids all messed up, man. They got these kids all messed up, thinking they're making hash and it's green. They got everybody messed up. But look, I just gave you the most important teaching of your life.
Hey, Joe, sorry to interrupt you, but would you talk a little bit about timers and also when to start your lighting, like we talked about in the past, for people who will be.
Well, what you can do is just put Apollo timers on there, and they have a 12-in-1 schedule on there. It's you put the 12 hours on, whether you want them. Most people who do 12-in-1, they put the lights on at night because it helps heat the room. If you're in a cold climate, and then they put the 1 hour light break in the middle of the day to keep it in veg. So it's basically the timers. You fix it for 12 hours on, and then it goes into 5.5 off, 1 hour on, 5.5 off. It's just better if you go to Apollo timers. I should get an endorsement deal from those assholes. They're selling so many timers because they have a 12-in-1 YouTube thing. and which has gotten millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm not getting a penny from that. But the guy who put that YouTube up is getting money paid for that. That really gets me. I give the teachings out, and then they make money, and I don't. But I gave this free to everybody because I needed to break through the information control by the Dutch marketing fraud. I had to break through that wall. The only way I could break through the wall is by teaching photoperiodism. The only way I could teach photoperiodism is I taught 12 and 1 and came up with that paradigm. And that is a secret how I came up with those numbers. You know, there are various secrets that various why I did that, but it caught on. So if you go to Apollo Timers 12-1 schedule, they'll show you how to do it on the timer right there on YouTube. And I haven't gotten a penny from YouTube. But yeah, I gave it to the world. You know, I always tell people I'm a general in Lord Shiva's Ganja army, and I always get people very high. And that's what I've always done. I've never done anything but sell weed my whole life. The only time I have not been in the weed business was I was on probation for a year. I was in jail for a year in the county in Denver, in Arapahoe County, and I did a year in Arapahoe County jail. Terrible. And I got out. I had to do a year and a halfway house. So I worked for Time Life Libraries and selling music, and for a year, and then I went back to to what I was doing. But and then I was in the army when I was very young. That's the only 2 jobs I've ever had, and they all together they don't amount to about 4 years of enough for me to get Social Security when I had my company, the Bode Not Stupid company, the Tibetan Master Carpet Company. I used to, for a while there, I used to make the finest quality rugs in the world. But then the World Health Heritage Foundation came to Nepal and declared Nepal a World Heritage Foundation, and they gave all this money to Nepal. But one of the things that they did was say, we'll put the money into Nepal and build more hotels, do this, do that. But you have to clean out the old hippies and the whole dealers and all the people, the smugglers that have been here for the past 30 years. You got to clear that out. Then we'll come in with the Heritage Foundation. So my factory that I had worked on with my Tibetan friends got sold to a major, I don't even want to mention the name now. Stephanie Odegaard Carpets, one of the biggest Oriental Tibetan carpet dealers in the world, took over the factory that I worked. And then my Tibetan guy, when the police were looking for me in Nepal, that's when I left Nepal for good for now. My Tibetan partner was taken in and questioned and slapped around. When during 1986, 86, they had an inquisition after the Olympic heroin scandal in Nepal. They had like an inquisition. Anybody who was a foreigner, had a long-term visa, drove a car, had a car license, all those people were arrested and basically thrown out of the country. I had moved because I had a dispute with my landlord, so I had moved to the other side of the valley. And then I went and hid at in the jungle, Chittawan, in the jungles, until the heat was off in Kathmandu. Then I was going to go back, and my house in Nepal was completely clean, so I thought. So I was in the jungle hanging out. I couldn't handle it, man. It's a malarial zone. Well, first I went to the Royal Chittawan Hotel, and the whole hotel was full of Monangi money changers and dealers from Kathmandu. And they, oh, Mr. Joe, come on, have some scotch with us. Yeah, we cannot go back for a little while back to Kathmandu. Too many police. I said, yeah, man. So I sat there drinking rum and cokes with the fucking Monangis and stuff. And finally, I just couldn't take, I couldn't take Chittawan anymore. I had to go back to Kathmandu. Went back to Kathmandu. I was renting the hotel from the director of Beer Hospital, and I went to my house, and my helper, Fupa, he said, "Man, the police have been coming around asking if there are any foreigners here." And so I said, "No, we're clean, yeah." And then I looked up at the suitcases that I had stashed away, belonged to my buddy Rod, And the last time we was in Kathmandu, he said, "Look, I have all this stuff in my bags, and I want to put it somewhere safe. Can I just keep this stuff in your house?" So I put it in my house, and really never thought about maybe there's something in there. But when I came back from Chittawan, and I had learned that the police were going around my house looking for foreigners, I told my helper, I said, take those suitcases down. I took those suitcases down, and there was hash, there was opium, there were opium pipes, there was all kinds of stuff in those suitcases, which I had my helper get rid of right away. And I took that as a sign that my days were numbered. The next day, I took a flight out to Bangkok, and I haven't been back to Kathmandu. But one other time, I flew in and flew out real quick. One time, but no, I haven't been back, and that's the reason. They had the Inquisition in Nepal. Now in Nepal, they have all those hotels and all those Airbnbs and all these restaurants and or good food finally being grown and being brought from India, and Chinese are there, everybody's there, and they have no business because nobody wants to go to Kathmandu anymore. Why? Because there's no more love there. They're doing the drug war in Kathmandu, breaking down people's houses, doors down, burning their fields, and they don't realize that they're doing the work of the pharmaceutical companies. They're doing that in support of the pharmaceutical companies, because the pharmaceutical companies don't want you to have those genetics. So the cops are there, they're being paid by the Drug Enforcement Agency. When they destroy crops in Nepal, they get money. So the Nepalese are even more confused than Americans when it comes to cannabis. And now that the communists took over, and now, but they lost the last election because they were in dispute, so the Congress Party took over. One time I was in Calcutta, and Fidel Castro was coming to Tashkent for a meeting of non-aligned nations. So I said, "Oh my God, this is my hero. I'm going to go get to see Castro at the airport." So I went down to, I guess it's Dum Dum, whatever airport in Calcutta, to see Castro. And Castro got out, and when Castro got out, he got introduced to the communists there. You had the Communist Party, you had the Communist Party Leninists, you had the Communist Party Maoists, you had the Communist Party Maoist Leninists. Yeah, all these different communist parties that he was being introduced to. And then Castro got a chance to speak, and this is what he said: "In Cuba, tenemos un party comunismo." He said, "In Cuba, we only have one communist party." I nearly died laughing so hard, and so I've had a lot of experiences in India, but Nepal, to go back to Nepal, I'm hoping that I can basically educate them enough as much as I did in Thailand, and get them to realize that what they're doing, that they're actually harming themselves. My business plan for Nepal is the same business plan that I offered the Lao government. Is that they charge everybody $50 a head or whatever, nowadays $50 a head to come into Nepal, and they get a license at the airport where they can go to designated dispensaries and buy legal weed, and they have designated areas where people can smoke legal weed, and and have everybody taxed and regulated. Before it was taxed and regulated, before I would fly up to the Rara Lake in a helicopter, buy the production, take it back to Kathmandu, take it into the customs shed, pay 35 rupees a kilo, $3.50 in those days, bank rate, and take that shit right to my house. Only time I was doing anything illegal when I was shipping it out of the country. But if they charge everybody to get a license, and then that license is good forever, which makes them want to come back to Nepal. But we promote the love and peace, and that the hippies brought to Nepal, because everybody was running away from the war at that time, and nobody wanted to go to Vietnam. And why not go to India? Why not go to Nepal, where marijuana is legal? And when you went to Nepal, man, a dollar was so strong in those days. The people there, laborers, made $1 a day there if they were lucky in those days. You know what I mean? And so they loved us there because we bought everything. We opened up more restaurants had to be open, more hotels had to be open. I mean, there was a real scene going on in Kathmandu. And the Barendra, the king that was executed after his father died, he was a Harvard educated. He was one of those Yale boys. When he came back from Nepal, he'd already made a back to the state from to Nepal. He had already made an agreement with the pharmaceutical companies to make it illegal in Nepal. They made it illegal in Nepal in a country of Lord Shiva, man. Everybody there, every Hindu in the world has to take ganja once a year. That's part of their trip. And they either take it in bong or they eat it, they smoke it. They definitely used to have marijuana and opium and hash shops near every temple in India where you could go and buy weed and offer it to the sadhus. You know, so we're going to go back and give them a complete PowerPoint presentation, show them how much the industry was in the 1920s, show them how much money they how they were exporting. England used to come to the border of Nepal in a place called Nepalganj and Chitwan, and they used to get buy weed there in bulk that they would buy for the natural pharmaceutical industry in England and back in the States. So there was already a trade in the natural business in Nepal in the 19th century up until, probably the 1940s. There was still a farm in Afghanistan until the 70s that produced indica plants that they sent to England, and in England they were still selling indica tinctures in the 70s. And the same thing in India. I don't know if they still do it now, but they sold all kinds of cannabis tinctures. One time in Calcutta, I was smoking in Mr. Fong's opium den, famous den in Calcutta. And he said, well, you go into Bombay, when you go there, bring me this tincture back. And it was a tincture of opium that he took to cut down his opium habit. Because, he'd been smoking opium his whole life. He smoked a lot of it. He was so thin and frail, you couldn't believe it. He made this one porcelain statue of himself and then took the hairs out of his head, out of his beard, and put it in the beard of the statue after it was molded. It was a great guy. They said it was the biggest funeral in Calcutta ever of any Chinese. And he ran away from Mao because when Mao came in, he made opium illegal, and he got rid of all the opium addicts. He either killed them or they ran away or they stopped. But yeah, the Nepalis are confused. They're doing that same drug war game in Pakistan. They were doing it in the Philippines, in the Thailand, no more. That's done. It's nice to get patted on your back, and for doing something that's good, and I'm hoping that I can do the same thing again in Nepal and bring them back to reality. They told me yesterday that they're 70% sure that they're going to be able to pass the medical law there soon. So I'm trying to, I have my friend Atush coming here, and he's going to try to make an appointment where I can speak to the heads of both of the parties and basically go in front of the Congress and give them my PowerPoint presentation. Show them how much money they're missing, because man, the dispensary licenses, farming licenses, all kinds of licenses that they can make. Everybody's got to pay to have a license. Even the foreigners that come in. If every foreigner paid $50 to have a ganja license in Nepal, you know how much money that would be? If say they get 2 million tourists a year, that's like $50 million.
Hey Joe, remember what we were talking about with I think you said apothecary or something like that, Brett Bowe?
Okay, apothecary genetics. Very good point. Thank you. I worked. Reinhardt and I made seeds for apothecary genetics. They gave me all the clones of the real mothers, plants of the real mother plants, of cam dog, of Skywalker, all these strains. I forget all, but I have a list of them, and so I OG'd them with my OG. In fact, they all became better, right? And so now you see them online. You see those strains on back again, and those were from the last seed run that I did with the original mothers. A lot of the clones that came from that period of time were clone only. There was no seed. I made seeds from them, and so I got to meet Brett Bogue. Brett Bogue was in this company called Cannabis Science, and Brett Bogue did really a lot of damage to the scene because of what? He would take clones from California of California strains and sell them to Arjan at the greenhouse. So Arjan at the greenhouse, all the cups that he won was from California strains that Brett Bogue brought for him. So he was selling us out then. You know what I mean? He was selling out to growers in California then. But you know, he's one of the, you know, I've had that problem before in my past when you get a guy who's a good guy and everything, but he's got 3 wives and 8 children or something. I had one guy in Nepal, he had 4 wives and 24 children. Brett Bogue has 2 or 3 wives and had a bunch of children, you know, and there's just no way that he can afford to pay everybody. And so he ended up not paying me for the seeds that I produce. And then he gives me the seeds back, the seeds I produce instead of the ones I gave from my collection. Just give me back my stuff. Do you want your stuff? Take your stuff. You know, just give me, you not paying me, then give me back my stuff. But he didn't do that. And he never paid me like 50 grand. But I called him up and he was all bemoaning that his mother had died. Right. And he, you know, all this other stuff. He got a divorce. He's got a new girlfriend. She's having a baby. All this other stuff. He's been married 3 times now. He told me his mother had, and on top of this, my mom died. So I sort of felt bad about it. Except a couple of years later, he told me he's talking about his mother as she was still alive. I said, "Well, where is you?" "Oh, she's right over here." He'd lied about his mother dying. I couldn't believe it, but he has the kind of mentality that a Kevin Godry of Jodry has. He's the same. There's a lot of those. If you're in this industry, there's like 99% of the people you can't trust.
100%.
You know, and the ones that you can trust, you hold on to them like they're gold, dude, because everybody else is a flake. Oh, they want to have fame in cannabis. They want to be known for cannabis. They want to do, you know, dude, how about just growing some good stuff? It's a crazy scene. It's a crazy scene.
It's definitely what I've experienced many times, multiple times, even up until yesterday with people that I was relatively close to, you know what I mean? So yeah, you can't really trust hardly anybody.
Yeah, because they know you have the gold. Now they want some of it.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
these genetics turn people strange. I tell you, Joe, I've just seen such, you know, allegedly solid people just turn completely.
Man, that's been happening to me from ever since I got back into the seed game. It's been happening for him for over 10 years now. Just like, and I mean, it's ridiculous. That's why I stopped.
It's the scummiest industry you can imagine. It's people who are just regular scrollers on Instagram and they believe all the bullshit and the internet personas. They would have no concept of the actual lowness of humanity that are in the seed game.
Stoma is like the biggest joke. He has all these long hair and Rasta thing, and Rastafari. He's the furthest thing from Rastafari. He's a Jewish guy from New York who did him too much heroin. That's what he is. And he brought down the Coptic Church. That drug bust in Miami. Oh, those guys were still in jail 10 years ago. I mean, they did 30 years. The Coptic Church. You know, that's the Coptic Church. That's an example of Watson and Clark, that their information led to the qualifying and quantifying of those loads, where they came from, where they, you know what I mean? Those seeds all went to the University of Mississippi. You know, it's all been part of the game. It's all been part of the game, you know. We've all been hoodwinked by the pharmaceutical industry, and now the pharmaceutical industries run the government.
Well, in order for them to do that, they had to take the medicine out of cannabis. That was the first step, right? And then
I've been putting the medicine back in cannabis for over 10 years because I can't stand the cannabis of today.
Yeah, people are brainwashed because they're on straight THC.
And that, I tell you something, this scene is more brainwashed than the scene that I was coming out of as a kid. The kid that when they hadn't smoked pot before and they smoke it for the first time, it's enlightenment. It's no longer that. Now it's more of a how can I make money out of it? How can I make myself famous? How can I do this? How can I do that? I mean, even that guy Jodry, he tells you he's a career hustler. What more do you need to know?
That guy is a fed.
Well, yeah, at a certain level, a lot of them are. And what they did, buddy, is they took it away from the police. They made marijuana. What they've done is the police used to arrest you for marijuana. Now they sell it to you.
Well, I don't know if you've seen many of his videos. Have you heard this ludicrous story? He starts out saying, you know, he was I poke fun at it and say he's been catching cases whilst he was in the womb, but he basically says he was doing crimes from a young kid, and he came from his words a terrifying crime family that were very well known, and they were bringing in lots of different, you know, parcels from here and there. Shipments.
That's all bullshit.
Yeah, but then he says, he goes on to say that he then worked for like the Navy, like the drug squad, getting on the bottom of boats, looking at shipments that have been dragged in on chains underneath the water, and he'd get to see those, and that's how he learns about all the land races. Was he used to
you don't learn the land races that way. I mean,
he's a
right away, you know that he's full of shit.
He's absolutely
about
full
land,
of shit.
You know,
he's a lying little scumbag.
Yeah, well, you know, like 99%, I like that. Just a very few people that have scruples.
They are.
Well, people don't have scruples anymore. You know that. You know, it's just funny. I mean, I had one guy, you know, he had me interview his grower. And I have my test. I have a test that I just tell people, and then I ask them a few questions, and then I qualify them to what level of a grower they are, what kind of information that they are. And I've had to do that. I've had to create that just so I can cut the bullshit out of my life. Imagine if I was to start listening to all these videos, that guy who runs the hash church, that's a propaganda machine for fucking Dutch marketing fraud, dude.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what would you give up selling nylon at wedding dress prices if you were Dutch Shell? You know how much Dutch Shell helped ruin marijuana. They created BHO.
Yeah.
That's the most poisonous stuff that you've ever. And then they have live resin and all these other stuff, but it's all processed. You know, how about just taking the trichomes and the oils off and let me smoke that? You know what I mean? So now they have totally killed the reputation of hashish and have filled it in with BHO. So, but that makes the petroleum companies even happier that you're using petroleum products. That's another thing that we can do. Another product we can produce. We can produce. You know what I mean? It's like you know, soon hopefully one day they won't be able to give that shit away. You know, I mean, that's the reason we don't have solar everywhere in the States. They took Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the greenhouse. The first thing that Ronald Reagan did when he came there, it was take them off. You know, Ronald Reagan was the guy who came up with trickle down economy. Have you had that in England yet? So anyway, I can't tell you how much damage that University of Mississippi and Carlton Turner has done. Ooh, and he gets paid for giving speeches nowadays.
So most
So
of this terpene science and stuff that these guys are putting out, a lot of it's propaganda, right? I mean, it's not based on real information. They're just putting some real information in there and then basically leading you up to sell you hemp terpenes, right?
Right. But they come from a blueberry hemp plant. I mean, I don't, Nathan Russo, he's a snake. So yeah, I can't tell you. I had an opportunity to have a medical grow in Malaga, not in Malaga. Yeah, I guess it was Malaga. Yeah, and it was a university, an agricultural university, was down defunct. I would have gotten the university and the buildings and everything, and all I had to do was refurbish it and start to grow. And I get an official desk at a government desk with a secretary, all paid by them. And I met the reefer man, so I contacted him over the internet and made him a proposition, and he jumped at the chance. And after I talked to him about a few minutes, I thought to myself, I said, you know what? This guy's going to stab me in the back, right? And so I said, I mentioned something like that to him. When I went, I took him I went to Spain. I sent him over to Spain with this other guy, and they immediately took over my deal. And so when I went there, and my friend, he stopped talking to me because I wanted them to sign a contract to make sure that I got my share of this deal if it happened. And my buddy in Spain, who I know from my days in Kathmandu, this was the first time an opportunity that he's ever had to make any money. So he was all happy to cut me out of it. So there I was in Malaga, and I had 2 snakes in my hands. I had 2 poisonous snakes, 1 in each hand. And so what I did is I threw both of them away from me as far as I can, and just turned away and cut them all loose. I haven't spoken to that one guy who I know from 1970 for over 10 years over this incident. You have to be straight.
You have to do it for your own peace of mind, Joe. Sometimes it's just better to forget about these idiots. So you just
run and walk away from them. Let karma do it. Let their karma catch them. Because, dude, if I went around killing everybody that ripped me off in my life, I'd be a mass murderer today.
Well, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I've always had that attitude that, hey, he deserves it, but let Shiva take care of that.
Joe, I know you've already said a lot, but I mean, for the people listening, is there anything you want to say directly to, I mean, you've given us so much awesome information, especially the cultivation part, but if you can say anything to these people, what would you say? Just for the people who don't know what to believe,
Buy yourself a copy. If you're a grower, get yourself a copy of a Nelson's Greenhouse Operation and Management. That whole technique, indoor technique, was created out of the information in that book. I unbrainwashed people in the 50s and in the 60s. I said, but now the people need to be brainwashed even more because of all the misinformation that you have gotten about cannabis. Cannabis has been the most important medicine of all time. It was used for many, many applications, and many, many varieties were grown for certain applications. Some were the Energizer Bunny, some were knockout drops, some were relaxation. I mean, there was different medicines that did different things. It's like aspirin came from the slippery elm bark, white bark, and they used to crush that up in a mortar and pestle, and then you take the natural stuff from the medicine. And that's what cannabis is. Cannabis is the best medicine of all time. You need to smoke medicine that is full full cannabinoid profile. You have to have all the medicines that are in there, all the medicines that were grown in Africa or in India, especially India and Asia, were grown from the days of the Mahabharata. That's 6,000 years ago. 6,000 years ago, it was used as medicine. The same Ayurvedic medicine that you use today, they still use it. Okay, it's been used as medicine for 6,000 years. You know, if they have the energizers, they have the relaxants, they have the knockout drops. It's a full-bodied medicine that you can do many things for people who have neurological diseases. Very important for them to have the Energizer Bunny. And the Energizer Bunny is only 17 to 19% THC. The rest is the THCV, all these other kinds of terpenes and flavonoids, right? One is the Energizer Bunny, and gives you focus, takes away your pain, and gets you out to the races. One guy I gave that to, he said, first time I felt my legs in 3 weeks. You know, they're out doing their wash, they're washing their car, they're doing the laundry, and then, 3 hours, 4 hours later, they say, well, what wasn't I smoking a joint? And they go back to that 17%, 19% joint, and they've only taken a hit. One hit was enough to get that effect. Then they have the other same Energizer Bunny effect, but it's an appetite suppressant. So at the same time you're getting energy, you're suppressing your appetite, so you're not eating munchies and
so this is the Malawi, right?
That's the Malawi and my hot chili pepper.
Nice. And that's a Colombian?
That's a Colombian. And so that's an F1. So those are F1s with my OG mix. The OG that I use for breeding gives it a much better bud structure. Like the Malawi is a very small plant. If you get an ounce or 2 or 3, I don't think you can get 3. But anyway, whatever you get with the Malawi that I grew a 4-pounder. One whole solid bud. You couldn't put both your hands around the top of the bud. That's how big it was. It was a freak, man. When you breed F1, you get freaks. You get freaks, dude. That's what you want is an F1. You don't want.
Let me ask you this, Joe, because I feel like this episode has a ton of awesome stuff in it. So a lot of people who have asked if you could just briefly tell us, because we know you do the crulet part with your hash. Is there any way for new people to just try out your technique and just use the coffee filter instead of the bag technique? Because I think people would really like to hear that just really quickly.
Well, if the problem is that I teach people a technique where I use a 5-micron 5-gallon bucket. So I get a big ice chest, and I fit the bucket inside the ice chest, and I surround the ice chest with ice. Then I put a third water, a third ice, and a third material. Right? A third material. And what I do is the material that I put in there, I put in the refrigerator so that when I put it in and it goes into the ice water environment, it releases the oils and the trichomes right away without much agitation. A lot of times you see these guys, they have these paint mixers that they're using to agitate for the weed and this and that. The bubble bags, they have a huge kit that they put over a 55-gallon bucket. You ever try to pull out one of those bags in a 55-pound bucket? Good luck. You need a forklift to do that. Are you kidding me? They're all the techniques, and people actually buy that shit thinking that they can do that. And so now you have a bucket, right? And on the top of the bucket, you make 2 holes where the mixer will go. Regular food mixer, and that has 3 speeds. You always use the lowest speed. and then you fix the top of the bucket with the cover on top. You make 2 holes in it, and you fix your mixer in there, right? And then when you have the combination of water, ice, and material, you put the material in first, you put the ice in second, and you put the ice in third, the water in second, and then you put the ice in third. And then you mix it. When you mix it in there, after about 3 or 4 hours, it'll start to foam up. When you see that foam, inside the foam, if you're using buds, you'll see red hairs from the plant. When you see that, your mix is done. Okay. Then what you have to do is, now you have your mix. You take the mixer out. There's 2 ways I can teach this. If you have a 150 micron big bag, or if you have a 150, what I do is I take a piece of cloth that's 150 micron. I have a 150 micron cloth, and I fit it over another bucket with rubber bands and tape, and then I pour the material from the mix through that bucket, and I use the 150 micron material to separate the plant matter from the trichomes that are in the water and the oils that are in the water. So once you wring that out, now you have a bucket that's full of your trichomes and oil, right? So now what you do is you put another cover over the top of the bucket, put it in your closet, and wait until the next day. Wait 8 hours. In 8 hours, the oils will have gone to the bottom of the bucket, and the trichomes will have gone to the bottom of the bucket. The trick now is to pour off the top of the water without pouring off on any of the oil and water, and the oil and trichomes. So at first, when you let it sit, you can take the top off that has the top, right, with a pan, with a saucepan. You go in there and start taking off the top layers that's just water. When you get to the bottom, then you'll start seeing the trichomes and the oil, right? So you can also find a much larger type of coffee filter. You can use the same kind of coffee filter that they use at restaurants. When people come to restaurants, they have their vehicles run on oil, on oil that they buy at McDonald's, that they use for frying vegetables. They have big bags that they use for that same process to separate the products that are in that oil, the vegetable products that are in that oil, from the vegetable oil. If you get those filters, I would suggest for you to get those filters, because the 1 gram coffee filters, you'd have to be very, very careful taking out the water, because you could be removing trichomes and oil. There's only, when you get down to the bottom, like 3/4 of the way down, you'll take out the water, but there's still water and material inside. With a coffee filter, at that point you have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. It's not an easy setup. That's why Reinhardt invented his machine. In the machine, the trichomes go down a bladder that's fat to narrow, and then it goes into a hose that's connected to a cruet. So all the oils and the resins go into the cruet, and you just disconnect the cruet and just pour that through a coffee filter. With the when you're doing it in a 5-gallon bucket, you have to be smart. You have to figure out a way how to remove the top layer of water without removing any of the oils and the hash that's on the bottom of the bucket. So one way to be would be to put like have a bucket that you have a spigot into at a certain level. So you don't move the bucket around. You have a spigot where you can pour the water out. When it gets down to the very, very bottom, you shut it off, and that you can run through a coffee filter as much as you can at a time. You can't do it all, but you can do some at a time, a little bit at a time, because you got to remember the water's going to run through it. And then once you have it in the coffee filter, you take a spray bottle with water and you spray the sides of the coffee filter because there'll be resin there, and you'll spread it down so that all the resin goes to the bottom. And basically, you sit there and wait for the water to come out of the 5-micron coffee filter. That's the only thing that'll come out of the coffee filter will be the 5-micron coffee filter will be the water. The oils will stay in the 5-micron coffee filter and be reintegrated into the hash. So when I make hash, it's always like nearly 100% pure. I don't lose anything, but I have a machine. You should show the machine.
Yeah, I'll post a picture of that if you want. And yeah, I mean, so as far as
you also have you also have a picture there of the trichomes and the oil.
I'll post those two together.
Yeah, post those two together, because then you see what you lose.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a bigger layer than the trichomes.
It's a bigger layer than the trichomes.
What about drying the hash? Just air dry?
When you're drying the hash, they have these kind of well, what I do is I put it on a screen and dry it, a regular window screen that I have made into a place where I can place it and dry. So a finer screen, because the water continues to seep out and dry out. You need to let it dry out and dry out all the water. Once you dry out all the water, all you have to do is apply a little pressure and a little body heat, and it'll go into making a ball. But when you see the coffee filter and you see the separation, then people will start to understand. I haven't done a hash making class in a long time. I used to teach it hash making 101 at not Amsterdam, Port Lanserdam, right? Everything had to be named with the Amsterdam name, Port Lanserdam, right? And I worked for Port Lanserdam, and I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, the Dutch industry will pay you money not to have me teach this class here. And that's what they did. I didn't like teaching class there because he was teaching wrong information. I gave him some Colombian seeds. It was about, at least 20 feet tall. He said, man, what am I supposed to do with this? I said, smoke it. Finish it and smoke it, dude. It'd be the best shit you've ever smoked in your life. I like big plants. I don't like these small little plants.
Is there anything else in terms of strains you want to talk about, like OG or anything like that? Like, just as I don't know. I want to make sure we get everything out on this podcast.
Well, we can talk about genetics and strains. I mean, right now I'm doing my THCV line, and I'm breeding Energizer bunnies. I have one strain that's called Cherry OG, sour cherry. And that's 29% cannabinoid profile. I have another plant, Sour Goo OG, which is sour diesel, half gooey, and OG, and that's like a 15-pound plant. I basically grow for strength and for effect. I grow differently than other people. Everybody, everybody's stuck on couch lock. I'm not into that. I want energy. I'm too old to be on the couch.
Well, it doesn't help that they were told to take their trichomes all the way to the point of complete amber. That's a problem.
Yeah, that when they said that, they were degrading your medicine. High times degraded everyget's medicine.
It doesn't take long to turn into CBN, right?
Yeah, then it turns into CBN. When it gets degraded, it turns into CBN. So I mean, none of these high times, to give them, they have changed everybody in their front office. I think they even figured out that that guy Matt is a scumbag too. But the Marley family and some people from LA bought High Times. So you would think that it would be a better organization now. They have their own farms where they're growing their own weed that they're selling. In Detroit, they sell strains, but when you go buy High Times strains, you can only buy a quarter or an ounce. You can't buy a gram. You can't buy a half ounce. It comes packaged in packages for an ounce and packages for a quarter ounce. And basically they're selling flowers again. What I want to do is bring the flowers back. These guys are all growing. They all look like little pieces of turds, that hash. I mean, it's little small buds. I mean, I'm used to like buds as big as my arm, dude. I mean.
Well, hopefully with what we're doing here, maybe people will start to think to themselves, I mean, if you're like me, this has all been really shocking and eye-opening information. Some of this stuff Blue Skies had touched on before, but this all put everything together for us in a way that's understandable. We can make sense of it now.
Now you can make sense of it, but the Bubble Man, he's a marketing fucking genius on one level, and another level he's a total thief. So so people emulate Mark. So you have a Godfrey, what's his name, Kevin Dodry, that guy. You have that. I saw Shanti Baba that he was interviewed. He gave an interview about strains, and I go back with Howard before Shanti Baba. I go back to the 60s, the 70s with them. I had a buddy of mine that did time in Brixton. He ran a load to Mark's, and he got his stuff from Mark's, and he was driving it out. He got his share from Mark's. He was driving it out in his Jag, and whatever he had at the time. I don't know what it was, but it was some English car. And it was the IRA time, and he went through a check post, and they searched him, and they found that Colombian weed. And he was from Brooklyn. He was my boy, and he did time in Brixton. So I go way back to fucking with Howard Marks. So the Shanti Baba, he ate Dutch chocolate. The reason he ate Dutch chocolate, he couldn't have survived on that scene. He has tried to be independent of the Dutch scene all along, but he couldn't be independent with the Dutch scene because they controlled everything. So he had to play along. At certain times, he had to play along. When I started coming out with my shit, the Dutch started really getting down on me, right? Shanti Baba said, "Yeah, it's Joe's come out with another episode of his, gobbledygook or his crazy antics or stuff." So I have no respect for him because he eats Dutch chocolate, and I don't know what the deal was between him and Howard were whether it was on good terms or bad terms. I don't know whether he made money on every seed that was sold or not. I know that Jack Herrera never made money on the seed bank on his strain. Every time the Dutch would pay his ticket, put him in a first-class hotel, treat him to everything, fed it to everything, all the women he wanted, all the, young girls with dreads he wanted. You know what I mean? So but he never made any money. They even sued the estate so that they could keep the name Jack Herrera as a trade name, trademark. I think they had to pay the son off. The son, I don't know whether he sold it or not. I would think that he wouldn't sell it. They go to the extreme. Todd McCormick went to the extreme of buying the rights to be the editor of the 13th issue of The Emperor Has No Clothes. And again, The Emperor Has No Clothes. That was all came out of a trial in the 50s. There was a trial in the 50s, and that's where all that information came about, because somebody got busted for growing in the 50s, and they took it to trial. And that's as far as I've ever gotten, because I heard that from a lawyer. So, that information came out of a famous trial in the 50s, because in the 50s, marijuana had only been like illegal 10 years, 12 years. You still had some people that had always grown their own. So there was some kind, and when they came, so that transcript from the Library of Congress and all that stuff was already done. He just jazzed it up. He jazzed it up, and he became world famous over somebody else's work. That was somebody else's trial, and that was people have been smoking cannabis illegally, since 1940. So from before 1940 until time immemorial, until they discovered it, evolves with it. You know what I mean? When he was a Barry Goldwater freak. He was the guy that ran against Kennedy. This guy wanted to blow up Moscow with nukes. He wanted to nuke China in the 50s and in the 60s. This cat was a maniac. That was the guy that Jack Herrera followed. And as a kid, now when I met Jack Herrera, I was wearing a communist hammer and sickle, and he shuddered that I would be the one that would be teaching his people. These are my people. They wouldn't even have people. That's why I told him, I said, Jack, you wouldn't even know what marijuana was. It wasn't for me. Your people? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? People tell you about me. They talk about me, and they can't believe I'm still selling weed, and I'm 75. Everybody else is, I've never done anything but sell weed, dude. Now I grow it legally, that kind of thing. So it's the people are brainwashed nowadays, worse than they were in the 50s and 60s. Nowadays you got to train, you got to send everybody back to school to really learn how to grow weed, dude. I mean, they got so much bad information out there. But once I got through with it with 12 and 1. 10, 20 years from now, maybe I won't be around, whatever. But 12 and 1 will always be there. 12 and 1 will always be there. That was the most important technique ever taught to people on this scene, photoperiodism. And basically what they do indoors is they replicate a grow period. What they should be replicating would be 12 and 1 and 8 on, 16 off, or 6 on, 16 off. When people see the difference, how much more you get. Here's a guy, I don't know this guy from Adam, but he thanked me profusely. He gained, let's see, as much as 150 grams. He gained 24%, 25%. You gain 25% doing true horticultural technique. If you want to grow stuff at home, you got to use the real technique. You want to grow pot that's not stressed. People here are growing pot that's been totally stressed. How about growing a relaxed plant? I bet your pot be better. And I'm going to be doing another grow class, and I'm going to be doing another class on nutrients and strains. And I'm going to talk about the stuff that I have and what it does, and da, 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 da. And I'll do another show, another grow show, and I'll talk some more about making hash. But you got sort of the principle. I have I don't know if I have copies of my books of. I may even have pictures in my books of using the buckets as a routine. You know, the buckets are a little bit cumbersome. Actually the machine that Reinhardt invented to make hash is a bucket, but a metal one. You know, stainless steel, and it has one screen, 150 micron screen that separates the plant matter from the falling trichomes. You know, Reinhardt's patent was this: that cannabis, right, in an ice water environment with simple with simple agitation, will remove all the oils and all the trichomes as undamaged as possible. If you speed it up, you break up the trichomes. Some people do it in a big glass thing and do it with a big spoon and do the ice, and then they separate it, and they separate the water. That's another way of doing it. But once you try it and do it, and you see, oh, that's where it is. Now you have to figure out how to get there, how to get it, because you've got to separate the water from the material and the oil. With the machine, it does that for you. You know, it does that for you. I was about to make a bigger machine. I even took Reinhardt's son to China. I sent him to China to try to replicate and make a bigger machine, which would have killed anybody's machine. It had the same effect as a coffee filter, but it was a machine part. The machinery alone, they would have had to change their machinery, recount whatever they had to do, and change their machinery to make this product. That one part, it would have cost them $500,000, you know, to create to make the machine to make that part. But once they made that part, man, I would have revolutionized the industry. But COVID and Trump stopped me short. Otherwise, I'd have that equipment out now, you know. And so the contract wasn't fulfilled, you know. But yeah, there is some techniques that are good. That once you see that, the thing about the ice water technique is you have to see how it works, the method. You know, what you could do is get a big glass and then pour it in a big glass, right? Pour off the top, the top of the water, then pour that water into a big glass, and then let it sit. And then you'll see the separation yourself. Once you see the separation yourself, you have to figure out a way how to get the water out of it, right? There's many ways that you can do it. You know, I have a machine, but there's many ways that you sort of can create your own process. But it has to be go through a 5 micron coffee filter. If you need a bigger one, you can go to in the kitchen industry. They make a bigger one for draining off the oil when they're frying, you know, oil, making potato chips or whatever, French fries and stuff. There's always some French fries left in the oil. So they have a filter to filter that through and take that vegetable out of there. That oil they use as gasoline. Haven't you ever seen these cars that are run on vegetable oil? They have that here.
I mean, yeah, it seems like any kind of money saving invention gets fucking shelved or completely destroyed, and the people who put that out get completely blacklisted or their lives destroyed as well, you know?
Well, you can't lie about certain things. You can't lie when you have hash that's scissor hash, and it's fucking 10 times stronger than anything you've ever had in a dispensary. you know. So I mean,
That's the truth for sure. That's another thing too, is I hope people are putting the pieces together and they're thinking they need to use real medicinal strains when they're making their hash too, because their wedding cake, it's going to make hash, but it's not going to give them medicine like we're talking about, you know?
right now, and wedding cake ain't shit. But and those strains, wedding cake, all that, that's all been by Robert Connolly Clark and David Watson clones, or people there that work with those people. That's what that energy is from that group.
I mean, that's probably what we're talking, 80% of the genetics people are using.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, maybe a little less. I don't know exactly, but it just is like,
there's only a few that are working with land races. Only a few that are producing F1. People don't even know what F1 is nowadays. First generation, and there's just so much misinformation, you know. And then everybody, because they've grown pot, they got you high, they think they're experts.
And they don't know about hybrid vigor either. But we talked about that too, you know.
They don't talk about hybrid vigor. You only get it when you breed two different strains from two different land races. And if you look in my page, you'll see one plant that's one solid bud, Malawi plant. If you look through my photos, you'll see it. That was the bud that my Malawi OG grown in South Africa. You know, and it's in the pictures that I sent you.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of amazing pictures and stuff. I mean, most of your strains that I've seen look, you know, really unique, and they just look like they're solid stuff, you know.
I have so many people now that I'm off the biz. They know that I'm not on. I'm not selling seeds. Everybody's trying to get a hold of me, and basically, you know, they want what I have, and you know, I mean, I'm so tired of people. It's like I feel like sometimes, like I feel like a magnet for leeches, you know. So I said, why should I put myself in this place and just, you know, why not do something different? And now I did my THCV line. I got my own big grow. You're going to come down here and help me grow. You know, I've got a whole team here, everybody, and you know, we're going to do some good things, and we're going to bring the medicine and the flowers back, because I want to be able to sell flowers. I don't want to sell grams. You can come and buy an ounce. You can buy a quarter ounce. You can buy a half ounce bud, a ounce bud, or a quarter ounce bud. I'm going to sell buds. When people pull a bud out, they buy an ounce, they'll pull a bud out. They can smell it like it was, dude, right off the fucking plant, man. I'm back. I'm going to bring it back to the bud stage. Who has the best bud? Okay, here, look at this. You know, I've got plants that triple deck trichomes. That's a breeder.
That's your that's your blue dragon, right?
Yeah, that's a breeder.
And that's like what, 5 different land races or something?
No, that's one land race. That's
wow.
Wow. That's pure land race. Pure land. You go look at it's on Phylos. If you look at it in Phylos, it's not mixed with anything but green. It's solid land race. That's a 1,000-year-old strain. It used to be called Kerala Gold. It's a strain that was sold at all the Hindu temples in India. That's an old Indian strain that goes back thousands of years. You know?
Yeah, I mean, most people really don't even have any real concept of that. You know, everything is new. I mean, they turn people into seed junkies, basically. You know, that's why we really love these old timer 1 genetics, because they just, you know, they're just a breath of fresh air, you know.
Have you shown Joe the pictures of your skunk haze you're growing?
I did. I sent him a couple pictures, yep, and they're just exploding every day now. So, and I can't wait to put them on the 12-in-1 and just see how, because I want to see them grow wide like that. When you talk about them being a light junkie, it makes sense, man, because if you watch how your plants behave, They are, man. They're hungry for that light constantly. It's like they, it's why they're stretching so much and shit. So yeah, I'm just ready to see how that changes everything.
I'm gonna tell you what I tell everybody. You can call up Dutch marketing fraud and they'll pay you not to be talking on the radio. Not to be talking on fucking podcasts.
I mean, we just want to put this information out because we've been treated like shit by so many people.
Well, now let me ask you a question. You
What's
think
up?
you've been treated by shit by so many people? How have I been treated? They can't attack me because I'm real. I'm the real deal. People meet me, see me, they know me. I'm the real deal, dude. There's no bullshit here, man. I fucking punched Danko in his mouth, right in his eye. Bam! I hit him. The guy from Cannabis said, "Man, you had a look of you had a killer's look in your eye." I said, "Yeah, I felt like killing him. I hit him as hard as I could."
I was hoping you were going to punch that little dweeb bubble man for stealing your ants.
No, you got to remember, I was coming from the drug war, and so I was trying to keep a low profile. Same thing when I met Howard in 2006. I didn't get really friendly with him, even though I was staying with his best friend's wife, a girlfriend. She was now my wife. You know what I mean? That's how far I go back with Howard. He dealt with my boys from high school, and his best friend's girlfriend was my wife back in the day. That's how close we were. And I was so paranoid in those days that I just didn't want to get busted doing anything. You know what I mean?
I mean, honestly,
I met him in 99 or 2000. I forget which, but he was a nice guy. Literally a nice guy.
Well, Bubbleman has never been a nice guy.
No.
He wasn't born nice. He has you can look him in the eye, you can see that he can't be trusted.
I wish you had punched him, man. It really annoys me to think of that little prick, like being so arrogant to say, give me an ounce. Like basically, give me an ounce. I'm not giving it back. What a little prick, man.
Yeah.
Arrogant little prick. That sums him up. Just that little anecdote there that you told, Joe. That sums him up to a T. You know what I mean?
Sums him up to a T. That's he's a low life. How much weed I give away free.
Yeah.
Free. But I didn't want it. This was my stash. I said, you got to give me back the same shit. He was totally, I saw him for what he was worth. But when Reinhardt didn't take him to task, I lost a lot of respect for Reinhardt. Lost a lot of respect for him. And imagine if you had to live with your wife, and then for the rest of your life, she said, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. Right? You'd go nuts. You go nuts. And in the end, he died of a heart attack in his sleep. They had the GW Pharmaceuticals had him busted at his place.
Really?
And the only thing they took were seeds.
Yeah.
They have a lot of pull, these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a lot of pull, these guys. That I have there's an article that you might be able to find it on the internet. The Grobot bust, Grobot. See, people are talking about light dep. Nobody did light dep before Reinhardt Delp, except if you were in the flower industry. But nobody in the cannabis industry did. That was something that Reinhardt did, and he knew he was an engineer. He was very smart, and so in Europe he developed a black box that you could open it and close it. You could open it when the sun was out, and then close it when the sun was down, and put it on your deck, on your balcony in Spain, and grow a little weed for yourself, right? And then when he did that there, then he took that idea back to California, and there he developed a greenhouse, solar powered greenhouse that opened and closed. That was a pain in the ass because it wasn't professionally done. It was done good, but it was done okay, but it wasn't even done good. I mean, it wasn't. It had to be when you're doing that kind of stuff. You have to have very professional equipment, and so he had a solar thing. But nobody has been doing light depth longer than Reinhard Delp rather, and no one. And he was the one that named light deprivation light depth. That caught on, so everybody light depth. And you look at it now, and people, light depth. I'm teaching light depth. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And taking credit for light depth, or where did light depth come from? Light depth came from Reinhard Delp, the patent holder, the method patent, very much different than a mechanical patent. Method patent for ice water extraction. That guy had been doing light depth since the 80s, and so he was selling light depth machines in Europe in the 90s. And so we had an argument, him and we argued all the time because I didn't like his methods. I thought he was stupid. Might have been a chemical engineer and so bright and everything. He made biggest improvement in hash making in 5,000 years and all that shit. That's fine. But otherwise he was a fucking asshole because he thought he was smarter than everybody else. And so I talked with him. I said, man, why are you calling it light depth? And I said, it's photoperiodism. It's photoperiodic control. It's in the book. Show them the book. Teach them. He said, nah, these Americans, they can't handle that much. They can't handle that. It's too big a word for them. Light depth. They'll know light depth. Light depth is something that can click and in their mind, and they can understand that once they see the product, the production of it and what it does. So he was right. That was one of the few things that he ever told me that I applied in my life, and that's how I invented 12-in-1.
Well, I think that a lot of people are going to get a lot of use out of that, and I hope that everybody has really thought about everything you said, because at the end of the day, people need to just think for themselves and come to their own conclusions, based on the information we have now. So, I mean, is there anything else you want to add, Joe?
No, I'm tired. We got to talk another day. We'll talk tonight, and then we'll make up another show.
Okay, all right.
I want to do a show introducing my nutrient lines and some stuff that I have that is very, very special. And so we'll talk tonight, and then we'll make up another show. But you have a show to release, and now you have a new show to work on.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right, man.
All right.
Shiva Shankar, you take care, buddy.
Yep.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, man.